Wilburn's fingers freeze on the maintenance panel as the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoes through the empty corridor. He's not alone in the lower decks of the Endeavor, and that can only mean one thing. The Tarkalians have breached their defenses. The ship-wide alert blares, its piercing wail cutting through the usual hum of the engines. Will's heart races as he realizes the gravity of the situation. For weeks, the Endeavor has been trailed by a Tarkalian vessel, attempts at communication growing increasingly insistent. Now it seems they've taken matters into their own hands. Will ducks behind a bulkhead, his breath catching in his throat as a group of figures shimmers into view. Their cloaking technology fades, revealing forms that are unmistakably female and undeniably alien. At their head stands a creature of breathtaking beauty, her iridescent skin catching the dim light of the maintenance bay. "I am Arya," she announces, her voice melodic yet tinged with urgency. "We seek knowledge of human male anatomy. It is crucial for our understanding of your species' rapid expansion." Will's mind reels. The Tarkalians, known for their advanced biotechnology, believe the secret to humanity's success lies in male genitalia. He almost laughs at the absurdity, but the seriousness in Arya's multifaceted eyes stops him. "This is a restricted area," Will manages, trying to sound authoritative despite his vulnerable position. "You need to leave immediately." Arya takes a step forward, her companions fanning out behind her. "We cannot. The High Council has authorized this mission. An alliance between our species hinges on its success." The implications hit Will like a photon torpedo. This isn't just about satisfying alien curiosity. It's a matter of galactic diplomacy. His decision in this moment could shape the future of human-Tarkalian relations. The sound of booted feet grows closer. The security team is on its way, no doubt armed and ready for a potential alien threat. Will's gaze darts between Arya's expectant face and the corridor leading to his fellow humans. Time seems to slow as Will weighs his options. Comply with this bizarre request and potentially compromise his dignity, or resist, possibly jeopardizing humanity's chance at a powerful interstellar alliance. The maintenance bay suddenly feels claustrophobic, the air heavy with tension. Will's hand hovers over his communicator, a direct line to the approaching security team. Arya and her companions watch him intently, their alien features a mix of curiosity and determination. In this moment, trapped between duty and diplomacy, Will Burns must make a choice that could alter the course of human history. The future of two species balances on the edge of a knife, and the weight of that responsibility settles squarely on his shoulders. As the alarms continue to blare and the footsteps grow ever closer, Will takes a deep breath and makes his decision. Will's hand dropped from his communicator, his decision made. With a deep breath, he stepped out from behind the bulkhead, facing Arya and her companions directly. "All right," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll cooperate, but on one condition. We do this in the medical bay, under proper supervision." Arya's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with approval. "Agreed. Lead the way, human." As Will guided the Tarkalians through the corridors, he tapped his communicator, opening a secure channel to Dr. Elena Rodriguez. "Elena, it's Will. We have a situation. Meet me in the medical bay, and please, keep this discreet." They had barely made it halfway when Captain Marcus Steele rounded the corner, his face a storm of fury. "Burns, what in the name of—" Will quickly stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Captain, I can explain. This is Arya, leader of the Tarkalian delegation. They're here for diplomatic reasons." Captain Steele's eyes narrowed, darting between Will and the alien visitors. Arya stepped forward, her presence commanding even in the face of the captain's anger. "Captain Steele, I presume." Her melodic voice filled the corridor. "We apologize for our unorthodox entry, but our mission is of utmost importance. An alliance between our species may hinge on what we learn here today." The captain's expression shifted from anger to cautious interest. He studied the Tarkalians for a long moment before speaking. "Proceed to the medical bay. I'll allow this examination, but under strict supervision. Burns, you're responsible for our guests." In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez was already preparing equipment when they arrived. Her eyebrows shot up at the sight of the Tarkalians, but she quickly composed herself. "Welcome," she said, her voice calm and professional. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Chief Medical Officer. Before we begin, I'd like to explain our standard examination protocols." As Dr. Rodriguez outlined the procedure, the Tarkalians listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide with fascination. They peppered her with questions about human biology, medical practices, and the various instruments around the room. Will, meanwhile, found himself perched nervously on the edge of an examination table, acutely aware of the bizarre situation he'd found himself in. As Dr. Rodriguez began the examination, Arya and her companions watched intently, their iridescent skin shimmering under the bright medical lights. "Fascinating," Arya murmured, leaning in close as Dr. Rodriguez took measurements. "The diversity in human male anatomy is remarkable. On our world, reproduction is vastly different." Will's curiosity got the better of him. "How so?" Arya's eyes seemed to glow as she explained. "Our reproduction involves a symbiotic relationship with a native plant species. It's a complex process that takes place over several lunar cycles." As the examination continued, Will found himself engaged in an impromptu cultural exchange, learning as much about the Tarkalians as they were learning about humans. Dr. Rodriguez meticulously documented everything, her fingers flying over a datapad as she recorded observations. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared to life, causing everyone in the medical bay to jump. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations. Unknown fleet approaching at high speed." The medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity. Will scrambled to redress as Dr. Rodriguez secured her equipment. Arya and her companions exchanged worried glances. "Your ship is in danger," Arya said, her voice urgent. "We can help. Our sensor technology is more advanced than yours. We could enhance your systems, give you an edge against this unknown threat." Will hesitated, caught between the potential benefits of Arya's offer and the risks of allowing alien technology to interface with the Endeavor's systems. The alarms continued to blare, a constant reminder of the approaching danger. "Will," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice low, "we need to make a decision. Fast." He looked at Arya, saw the sincerity in her alien features. In that moment, he realized that the future of human-Tarkalian relations might well rest on his next words. "All right," Will said, his voice firm. "Show us what you can do." Arya nodded, her skin pulsing with what might have been relief. She turned to her companions, speaking rapidly in their native language. One of them produced a small, crystalline device from a hidden compartment in their suit. As the Tarkalian approached the nearest computer terminal, Will's heart raced. He'd made his choice, for better or worse. Now, all he could do was hope it was the right one, as the unknown fleet drew ever closer to the Endeavor. Will's decision crystallized. He turned to Arya, his eyes locking with hers. "Let's do this." In a flurry of activity, Will quickly dressed and escorted Arya to the bridge. Captain Steele's face was a mask of tension as they burst through the doors. "Captain," Will said, slightly out of breath, "Arya has technology that can help us. We need to interface their sensors with our systems." Steele's eyes narrowed, but the urgency of the situation outweighed his reservations. "Make it fast, Burns." Arya stepped forward, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh bridge lights. She produced a small crystalline device from a hidden compartment in her suit. "This will enhance your sensor capabilities beyond anything you've experienced," she explained, her melodic voice tinged with urgency. Will and Arya worked in tandem, their fingers flying over consoles as they integrated the Tarkalian technology. The bridge crew watched in tense silence, the looming threat of the approaching fleet hanging heavy in the air. Suddenly, the main view screen flickered to life, displaying a level of detail that left the humans gasping. The unknown vessels came into sharp focus, their design unmistakable. "Zarconians," Arya breathed, her multifaceted eyes widening. "They've found us." Captain Steele's face hardened. "Explain. Now." Arya's words tumbled out rapidly. "The Zarconian Empire is known for their aggressive expansion and enslavement of other species. We've been monitoring their movements secretly, which is why we sought an alliance with humanity. They must have detected the Endeavor's presence." Battle stations, Steele barked. But Arya raised a hand. Wait, we have another option. She turned to Will, her eyes gleaming. Our stealth technology. We can integrate it with your systems, make the Endeavor invisible to their sensors. Will's mind raced, calculating the possibilities. It's possible, but it'll be complex. We'll need to work fast. Steele hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Will and Arya rushed to engineering, their bodies brushing against each other as they navigated the narrow corridors. In the engine room, they set to work, integrating the Tarkalian cloaking device into the Endeavor's systems. As they worked side by side, Will found himself increasingly aware of Arya's presence. The subtle scent of her alien physiology, the grace of her movements, the intensity of her focus. All of it combined to create an undeniable attraction. Hand me that plasma coupler, Will said, his voice slightly husky. As Arya passed him the tool, their fingers touched, sending an electric jolt through his body. Time seemed to blur as they raced against the clock. Will's engineering expertise melded seamlessly with Arya's knowledge of Tarkalian technology. Finally, with seconds to spare, they completed the integration. Bridge, we're ready, Will called over the comm. On the bridge, Captain Steele activated the cloaking system. The view screen showed the Zarconian fleet entering weapons range, their sleek ships cutting through space like predators on the hunt. Then, in an instant, the Endeavor vanished from their sensors. The bridge crew held their breath as the enemy ships passed by, oblivious to their presence. Only when the last Zarconian vessel had moved beyond range did a collective sigh of relief echo through the ship. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the comm. Senior staff and Arya to the conference room. Now. In the meeting that followed, Arya revealed the Tarkalian High Council's offer of alliance. The human officers listened intently as she outlined the potential exchange of biotechnology and stealth systems for assistance against the Zarconian threat. Throughout the discussion, Will found his gaze continually drawn to Arya. He noticed subtle changes in her physiology, a slight flushing of her skin, dilated pupils, increased respiratory rate. With a jolt, he realized she might be experiencing a physical attraction to him as well. As Will contemplated the implications of this mutual attraction, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The deck lurched beneath their feet as the Endeavor's engines began to malfunction. "We've dropped out of cloak!" Lieutenant Chen shouted from her station. Will's blood ran cold as he realized the integration of Tarkalian technology might have caused unforeseen complications. He locked eyes with Arya, seeing his own drive mirrored in her alien features. "Engineering! Now!" he said, already moving towards the door. As they raced through the corridors, the ship shuddered again. Will's mind whirled with possibilities, trying to anticipate the problem they'd face. They burst into engineering just as another alarm sounded. The main console was a sea of red warning lights. Will's fingers flew over the controls. Arya at his side, both of them working in perfect synchronization to stabilize the failing systems. "The power fluctuations are causing a cascade failure in the warp core," Will muttered, his voice tense. "If we can't stabilize it—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Arya understood the stakes all too well. As they worked frantically to persistence the crisis, Will became acutely aware of Arya's proximity. The heat of her body, the subtle movements of her hands, the intensity of her focus. All of it combined to create an almost electric atmosphere between them. Suddenly, a new alarm blared. Lieutenant Chen's voice came over the comm, tight with fear. "The Zarconian fleet has detected us. They're changing course to intercept." Will's eyes met Arya's, both of them realizing the gravity of their situation. The fate of the Endeavor, its crew, and potentially the future of human-Tarkalian relations now rested on their ability to determination this crisis. With renewed perseverance, they turned back to their task, racing against time as the Zarconian fleet drew ever closer. The air and engineering crackled with tension, the future hanging in the balance as Will and Arya worked to save the ship and its crew from the approaching threat. The air and engineering crackled with tension, the future hanging in the balance as Will and Arya worked to save the ship and its crew from the approaching danger. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing Will and Arya off balance. They stumbled, colliding with each other as alarms blared throughout the Endeavor. "We've lost cloak," Lieutenant Chen's panicked voice echoed through the comm system. "The Zarconian fleet has detected us." Will's eyes met Arya's, a silent understanding passing between them. They redoubled their efforts, fingers flying across control panels as they fought to stabilize the failing systems. Captain Steele's voice cut through the chaos. "All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers. We're making for the nearby nebula." The ship banked hard, inertial dampeners struggling to compensate. Will gritted his teeth, fighting to keep his footing as he rerouted power to the engines. Beside him, Arya's skin pulsed with an intense glow, her alien biology reacting to the stress. As the Endeavor plunged into the swirling gases of the nebula, new alarms blared. The ship shuddered, the hull groaning under the strain of the nebula's forces. "The nebula's interfering with our systems," Will shouted over the din. "We're seeing cascade failures across multiple subsystems." Arya's multifaceted eyes widened as she scanned the readouts. "The integration of our technologies is creating unforeseen complications. We need to stabilize the power grid before—" Her words were cut off as a shower of sparks erupted from a nearby console. Will instinctively pulled Arya close, shielding her with his body. For a moment, time seemed to slow. He became acutely aware of her alien form pressed against him, her skin warm and pulsing with energy. The moment passed as quickly as it had come. They sprang apart, both acutely aware of the tension between them, but forced to focus on the crisis at hand. Dr. Rodriguez burst into engineering, her face flushed with urgency. "Will, Arya, I have critical information. The nebula's radiation, it's affecting our physiologies, both human and Tarkalian." Will wiped sweat from his brow, struggling to divide his attention. "What kind of effects?" "Potentially severe," Rodriguez replied, her voice tight. "Prolonged exposure could alter our reproductive systems in ways we can't predict. We need to limit our time here." Arya's skin flickered with concern. "We have no choice. The Zarconians—" "I know," Rodriguez cut in, "but we need to find a way out of this nebula as soon as possible." As if in response to her words, the ship lurched again. Will's enhanced strength, a side effect of the nebula's radiation, allowed him to keep his footing. He noticed Arya seemed steadier too, her movements more fluid and precise than before. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the comm once more. "We've detected a planetoid within the nebula. It appears to be shielded from the worst of the radiation. We're setting down for emergency repairs." Will and Arya exchanged glances, both aware of the risks but seeing no alternative. As the Endeavor descended towards the planetoid's surface, they worked in tandem, their bodies in constant electrifying proximity as they struggled to keep the ship's systems online. The landing was rough, the ship groaning as it settled on the alien terrain. As the dust settled, a new scent filled the air, sweet, intoxicating, unlike anything Will had ever experienced. He saw Arya's nostrils flare, her pupils dilating in response to the planetoid's atmosphere. "We need to run diagnostics, see what we can repair," Will said, his voice husky. He was acutely aware of Arya's presence, her skin now emitting a faint, mesmerizing glow. Arya nodded, her movements languid. "Yes, but we should also explore our immediate surroundings. We may find resources to aid our repairs." Captain Steele's voice came over the comm, tight with stress. "Burns, take our Tarkalian guest and scout the area. The rest of the crew will focus on repairs and monitoring the Zarconian fleet's movements." Will and Arya exited the ship, the planetoid's atmosphere washing over them. The sweet scent was stronger here, seeming to amplify the changes in their bodies. Will felt a surge of energy coursing through him, his senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. They moved away from the landing site, their footsteps in perfect synchronization. In the distance, a series of cave openings beckoned, promising shelter and potential resources. As they approached the caves, Will became aware of a low pulsing energy. It seemed to resonate with his altered physiology, drawing him forward. Beside him, Arya's skin shimmered with an answering rhythm. They entered the cave system, the air growing thick with an otherworldly energy. As they ventured deeper, they discovered vast chambers filled with crystalline formations. The crystals pulsed with light, reacting to their presence. Will reached out, his fingers brushing against a crystal. A jolt of energy surged through him, intensifying the attraction he felt towards Arya. He turned to her, seeing his own desire mirrored in her alien features. "Will," Arya breathed, her voice laden with emotion. These crystals, they're affecting us. He nodded, unable to look away from her. I know, but I don't want to fight it. They moved closer, drawn together by forces beyond their control. The crystals pulsed brighter, their energy seeming to urge Will and Arya together. Just as their bodies were about to touch, a distant rumble shook the cave. Reality crashed back in as they remembered the precarious situation they were in. We should head back, Will said reluctantly. Report what we found. Arya nodded, her skin still glowing with intensity. Yes, but we can't ignore what's happening between us, or what these crystals might mean for our people. As they made their way back to the ship, the air heavy with ungrit tension, neither of them could shake the feeling that they stood on the precipice of something monumental. The future of human-Tarkalian relations, and perhaps the fate of both their species, hung in the balance, all while the threat of the Zarconian fleet loomed overhead. As Will and Arya made their way deeper into the cave system, the pulsing energy from the crystals grew more intense. The sweet scent in the air thickened, clouding their minds and heightening their senses. Their bodies thrummed with an otherworldly resonance, each step bringing them closer together. Will, Arya whispered, her multifaceted eyes wide with a mix of apprehension and desire. We should turn back. This energy, it's affecting us too strongly. Will nodded, but found himself unable to move away. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing against Arya's shimmering skin. A jolt of electricity passed between them, and suddenly all thoughts of returning to the ship vanished. They came together in a rush of heat and pent-up desire, their bodies intertwining as if drawn by an irresistible force. As they kissed, the crystals around them pulsed with renewed vigor, bathing them in a soft, ethereal glow. The cave seemed to come alive, the energy swirling around them as they explored each other's alien forms. Will marveled at the smoothness of Arya's skin, the way it pulsed with an inner light that matched the rhythm of his racing heart. Arya, in turn, traced the contours of Will's muscular form, her touch igniting sparks wherever their bodies met. As their passion reached its peak, the surrounding crystals flared with blinding intensity. A wave of energy washed over them, seeping into their very beings. Will gasped as he felt his body changing, adapting to better complement Arya's alien physiology. Arya, too, felt the shift, her form becoming more attuned to Will's human characteristics. In the aftermath of their union, they lay entwined, panting and disoriented. The cave's glow had dimmed to a soft pulse, but the air still crackled with residual energy. What just happened? Will asked, his voice husky and strained. Arya shook her head, her skin still shimmering with an otherworldly light. I'm not sure, but I feel different, changed. Before they could further discuss the implications of their encounter, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the cave. Panic surged through them as they scrambled to compose themselves. Captain Steele's voice rang out, sharp with concern. Burns, Arya, are you in here? Will and Arya exchanged a look of alarm as they hurried to make themselves presentable. They emerged from behind a cluster of crystals just as Captain Steele, Dr. Rodriguez, and Lieutenant Hawkins entered the chamber. The search party stopped short, taking in the scene before them. Will and Arya stood close together, their skin glowing faintly, surrounded by pulsing crystals. What in the name of... Captain Steele began, but was cut off by Dr. Rodriguez's gasp. The doctor held up her scanner, her eyes wide with disbelief. Captain, the readings, they've undergone significant physiological changes. Their genetic structures are merging, adapting. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared from their communication devices. Lieutenant Hawkins checked his panel, his face grim. Sir, we've got incoming. Multiple Zarconian ships entering the nebula. They've tracked us. Captain Steele's expression hardened. We'll deal with this later, he said, gesturing to Will and Arya. Right now, we need to get back to the ship. Move out. As they raced back through the cave system, Will noticed other Tarkalian crew members exhibiting similar changes to Arya. Their skin glowed faintly, and they seemed drawn to their human counterparts in a way that went beyond mere curiosity. Upon reaching the Endeavor, They found the ship humming with newfound energy. The previously malfunctioning systems now operated with unprecedented efficiency. "It's the energy from the caves," Dr. Rodriguez explained as they rushed to the bridge. "It's supercharged the integration of Tarkalian technology." Captain Steele took his place in the command chair, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Status report. Zarconian fleet closing fast, sir," Lieutenant Chen reported from her station. "But our weapons and shields are showing a 200% increase in power output." The captain's eyes narrowed as he considered their options. "Can we outrun them?" "Negative," Chen replied. "They've got us boxed in." "Then we fight," Steele decided. "Charge weapons and raise shields. Helm, plot an evasive course through the nebula." As the crew sprang into action, Will and Arya shared a look of understanding. Whatever had transpired between them in the caves had set in motion events that would reshape the future of both their species. But for now, survival was their primary concern. The Endeavor's engines roared to life, propelling the ship deeper into the swirling gases of the nebula. On the screen, the sleek forms of Zarconian warships emerged from the cosmic mists, weapons primed and ready. "All hands, brace for impact," Captain Steele's voice rang out as the first volley of enemy fire streaked towards them. The battle for survival had begun, with the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Balance. The battle for survival had begun, with the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Captain Steele's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. The Zarconian fleet was closing in, their ships emerging from the swirling nebula like predators from the depths. But the captain had an ace up his sleeve. "Tactical, divert all available power to weapon systems," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Let's show these Zarconians what our new upgrades can do." Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across her console, channeling energy into the Endeavor's newly enhanced weapons array. The ship hummed with power, the integration of Tarkalian technology creating a surge of energy that made the deck plates vibrate. "Burns, Arya, I need you on the bridge now," Steele barked into the comm. "Your expertise with these new systems could be the edge we need." Will and Arya arrived moments later, their skin still faintly glowing from their encounter in the crystal caves. As they took their positions at the auxiliary control stations, Will felt a new connection to the ship's systems, as if he could sense the flow of energy through its circuits. "Sir, detecting multiple Zarconian vessels on an intercept course," Chen reported. "They're charging weapons." Steele leaned forward in his chair. "Fire at will, Lieutenant. Let's see what this ship can really do." The Endeavor unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, beams of concentrated power lancing out into space. The Zarconian ships, caught off guard by the sudden assault, took heavy damage. Several smaller vessels erupted into balls of fire, while the larger warships reeled from the unexpected force of the attack. "Direct hits on multiple targets," Chen announced, a note of surprise in her voice. "Zarconian fleet is in disarray." But the enemy was quick to recover. The remaining ships regrouped, forming a defensive formation as they launched a counterattack. The bridge rocked as energy blasts impacted the Endeavor's shields. "Shields holding at 80%, Will reported, his hands moving instinctively over the controls. He could feel the ship's systems responding to his touch, almost as if they were an extension of his own body. Beside him, Arya's skin pulsed with light as she interfaced with the Tarkalian components of the ship's technology. "Rerouting power to forward shields," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "Weapons systems recharging at 150% normal rate." The space battle intensified, with the Endeavor weaving through the nebula's swirling gases, exchanging fire with the Zarconian fleet. The ship's enhanced maneuverability allowed it to dodge most of the incoming fire, while its supercharged weapons continued to deal significant damage to the enemy vessels. Suddenly, a massive energy beam from a Zarconian battlecruiser struck the Endeavor's port side. The ship lurched violently, and alarms blared throughout the bridge. "Hull breach on decks 5 through 8, Chen shouted over the noise. "We've lost artificial gravity and life support in those sections." Captain Steele turned to Will and Arya. "We need those systems back online now. Can you handle it?" Will nodded, exchanging a quick glance with Arya. "We're on it, sir." As they made their way to the damaged sections, Will could feel his body adapting to the changing environment. His muscles seemed denser, more capable of withstanding the strain of moving through areas without gravity. Arya's bioluminescence intensified, providing light in the darkened corridors. They reached the primary control junction for the affected decks, finding a scene of chaos. Exposed wiring sparked and hissed, while coolant leaked from ruptured conduits. "We need to reroute power and seal off the breach," Will said, assessing the damage. Arya placed her hand on a nearby control panel, her skin pulsing with energy. "I can sense the power fluctuations. If we can stabilize the flow here and here," she pointed to 2 critical junctions, "we should be able to restore basic systems." As they worked, Will found himself instinctively understanding the complex interplay of human and Tarkalian technology. His hands moved with preternatural speed and precision, repairing circuitry and realigning power couplings. Arya's abilities seemed similarly enhanced, her body acting as a conduit for the ship's energy systems. Within minutes, they had restored artificial gravity and life support to the affected decks. Will tapped his comm badge. "Burns to bridge. Critical systems are back online, Captain." "Good work," Steele's voice crackled through the comm. "Get back up here. We've just received a transmission from the Tarkalian reinforcements." As Will and Arya re-entered the bridge, they found the crew poring over tactical data transmitted by the approaching Tarkalian ships. Captain Steele looked up from the main view screen, his expression grim but determined. "The Tarkalians have provided us with detailed information on Zarconian fleet movements and vulnerabilities," he explained. "I have a plan, but it's risky. We're going to lure them deeper into the nebula." Will felt a surge of anticipation. "Where the energy affected us in the ship," he said, realizing the implications. Steele nodded. "Exactly. If we can draw them in, the nebula's radiation might disrupt their systems, giving us the advantage we need." As the Endeavor began its daring maneuver, leading the Zarconian fleet on a treacherous chase through the nebula's swirling energies, Will and Arya shared a look of understanding. The changes they had undergone in the crystal caves might be the key to their survival, and perhaps to unlocking even greater potential. The ship plunged deeper into the heart of the nebula, its enhanced systems straining against the onslaught of cosmic energies. Behind them, the Zarconian fleet followed, unaware of the transformative power that awaited them in the depths of this celestial phenomenon. The Endeavor plunged deeper into the nebula, its enhanced systems straining against the onslaught of cosmic energies. As the ship navigated through the swirling gases, Captain Steele turned to Will and Arya. "We need to buy more time," he said, his voice tense. "The Tarkalian reinforcements are still too far out. Burns, Arya, I want you to lead a team down to those caves. See if you can find anything that might give us an edge against the Zarconians." Will nodded, feeling a surge of anticipation. "Understood, sir. We'll assemble a team immediately." Within minutes, Will and Arya, along with a small group of human and Tarkalian crew members, made their way to the planet's surface. The team moved swiftly through the winding passages of the crystal caves, their bodies still adapting to the strange energies that permeated the air. As they ventured deeper, Will noticed that his muscles were becoming more defined, his strength increasing with each step. Beside him, Arya's bioluminescent glow intensified, casting eerie shadows on the cave walls. Suddenly, the narrow tunnel opened up into a massive central chamber. The team gasped in awe at the sight before them. Countless crystals, each larger than a person, pulsed with an otherworldly light. The energy in the air was palpable, causing the hairs on Will's arms to stand on end. "This is incredible," breathed Dr. Zan, one of the Tarkalian scientists. "The energy readings are off the charts." As the team spread out to examine the chamber, Will felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind. He turned to Arya, about to speak, when he heard her voice in his head. "Will, can you hear me?" His eyes widened in shock. "Arya, how?" "I don't know," she replied mentally, "but I can sense your thoughts, your emotions." Looking around, Will realized that the entire team seemed to be experiencing the same phenomenon. Human and Tarkalian alike were communicating without words, their expressions a mix of wonder and confusion. "Everyone, focus," Will projected, surprised at how natural it felt. "Let's see what we can learn about these crystals." The team began to experiment, touching different combinations of crystals and observing the effects. Will watched in amazement as Dr. Zan created a small force field by manipulating the energy between two large crystals. Another crew member, Lieutenant Reese, managed to levitate a small rock using nothing but her mind and the ambient energy. Will and Arya found themselves drawn to a cluster of crystals in the center of the chamber. As they approached, the crystals pulsed in sync with their heartbeats. Acting on instinct, they reached out simultaneously, their hands touching the smooth surface of the largest crystal. A surge of energy coursed through their bodies, and Will felt his consciousness expand. He could sense every molecule in the cave, every current of energy flowing around them. Working in perfect harmony with Arya, he began to shape the energy, condensing it into a small, pulsating core between their hands. The rest of the team watched in awe as Will and Arya manipulated the energy, their bodies moving in a synchronized dance. The connection between them deepened, their thoughts and emotions intertwining until it was difficult to tell where one ended and the other began. As the energy core stabilized, Will felt an overwhelming urge to be closer to Arya. Their eyes met, and without a word, they embraced. The moment their bodies touched, the energy core expanded rapidly, enveloping them in a cocoon of pure, radiant power. Will gasped as he felt his very DNA shifting, intertwining with Arya's at a cellular level. The sensation was intense, bordering on overwhelming, but not painful. He could feel himself changing, evolving, becoming something more than human. The energy cocoon's expansion triggered a chain reaction throughout the cave system. Long dormant crystals flared to life, and hidden chambers revealed themselves. As the cocoon dissipated, Will and Arya emerged, their bodies still glowing faintly. "Look!" shouted one of the team members, pointing to a newly revealed alcove. Inside, they found a collection of strange artifacts, clearly technological in nature but unlike anything they had ever seen. The objects seemed to hum with potential, as if waiting to be awakened. As Will reached out to examine one of the artifacts, a distant explosion rocked the cave. The team exchanged alarmed glances, suddenly remembering the battle raging above. "We need to get these back to the ship," Will said, his voice carrying a new note of authority. They could be the key to defeating the Zarconians. But before they could gather the artifacts, a group of heavily armed figures appeared at the chamber's entrance. The Zarconian commandos had found them. "Take cover!" Will shouted, both vocally and mentally. As energy blasts filled the air, Will realized that the real fight was just beginning. With their newfound abilities and the ancient technology at their fingertips, they had a chance to turn the tide of the battle. But first, they had to survive the onslaught of the Zarconian elite forces and find a way to get the artifacts back to the Endeavor. Will locked eyes with Arya, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, their fates now irrevocably intertwined. Will tightened his grip on Arya's hand as they faced the Zarconian commandos, their newfound connection amplifying their persistence. "Everyone, stay close!" Will shouted, his voice carrying both audibly and mentally to the team. "We need to get these artifacts to the Endeavor." As energy blasts scorched the air around them, Will's enhanced strength surged through his muscles. He grabbed a large chunk of fallen crystal, hefting it with ease, and hurled it at the advancing Zarconians. The makeshift projectile shattered against their front line, forcing them to scatter. Arya's skin pulsed with intense light, creating a disorienting strobe effect that left the Zarconian soldiers momentarily stunned. "This way!" she called, guiding the team towards a narrow passage. Dr. Zan and Lieutenant Reese worked in tandem, using their newly discovered abilities to manipulate the cave's energy. They created shimmering barriers of force, deflecting incoming fire as the team retreated. As they emerged from the caves onto the planetoid surface, Will's heightened senses picked up the distant rumble of engines. "Zarconian reinforcements, incoming," he warned. The team sprinted across the rocky terrain, their bodies pushing beyond normal human limits. Will and Arya led the charge, carrying the most crucial artifact between them, an ancient ring device that hummed with potential energy. Halfway to their destination, Will spotted an abandoned Zarconian ground transport. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "If we can get that operational, We might have a chance. They reached the vehicle just as the whine of Zarconian aircraft filled the air. Arya's eyes widened as she sensed the imminent danger. "Incoming!" she yelled, her skin flashing a warning pattern. The team scrambled to load the ring device onto the transport as energy bolts rained down around them. Will leapt into the driver's seat, his hands flying over the alien controls with surprising familiarity. Arya slid in beside him, her heightened perception allowing her to quickly interpret the Zarconian navigational systems. "Hold on!" Will shouted as he gunned the engine. The transport lurched forward, its anti-gravity propulsion kicking in as they sped towards the Endeavor's landing site. Behind them, Zarconian fighters screamed through the atmosphere, unleashing a barrage of weapons fire. The rest of the team, crowded in the back with the artifacts, focused their newfound abilities on creating a protective energy field around the vehicle. Will pushed the transport to its limits, weaving between rock formations as Arya called out incoming threats. The constant assault began to take its toll on their hybrid teammates, their faces strained with the effort of maintaining the shield. As they crested a ridge, the Endeavor came into view, but so did a full battalion of Zarconian ground forces. The ship's enhanced weapons blazed, holding off the attackers, but it was clear they were vastly outnumbered. Will's mind raced, calculating trajectories and assessing their options in microseconds. He locked eyes with Arya, a silent understanding passing between them. "Everyone, brace for impact!" he yelled. With a sharp turn of the controls, Will aimed the transport directly at the heart of the Zarconian lines. They picked up speed, the transport's frame groaning under the strain. "Now!" Will shouted. The team dropped their shield just as the transport plowed into the Zarconian forces. The impact sent a shockwave through the vehicle, momentarily disrupting the ancient ring device. It pulsed with energy, releasing a powerful electromagnetic burst that disabled every piece of technology within range, including the Endeavor and the Zarconian weapons. In the sudden silence that followed, Will and Arya sprang into action. "Go, go, go!" Will urged, helping the team out of the wrecked transport. They sprinted towards the Endeavor, carrying the ring device between them. Zarconian soldiers, recovering from the shock, began to give chase. Will's enhanced strength allowed him to easily support the device's weight, while Arya's agility helped them navigate the chaotic battlefield. As they reached the ship's entry hatch, Captain Steele's voice crackled over their comms, systems slowly coming back online. "Burns, Arya, get that device to engineering now!" They raced through the corridors, the ship humming back to life around them. In engineering, Will and Arya immediately set to work, their hybrid physiology allowing them to interface with both human and Tarkalian technology with unprecedented ease. "We need to integrate this into the power core," Will said, his fingers flying over the controls. Arya nodded, her bioluminescent skin pulsing in sync with the ship's energy patterns. "I think I understand how it works," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's an amplifier designed to channel and focus energy." As they worked, Will felt another wave of change sweep through his body. Patches of his skin began to glow faintly, mirroring Arya's bioluminescence. Beside him, Arya's muscles became more defined, taking on a more human-like appearance. The ship shuddered as it lifted off, Captain Steele's voice echoing through the comm system. "All hands, brace for emergency ascent. We've got the entire Zarconian fleet on our tail." Will and Arya redoubled their efforts, racing to connect the ancient device to the Endeavor's systems. As the final connection clicked into place, energy from the nebula began to pour into the ring, amplified beyond anything they had ever seen. The ship's shields flared to life, stronger than ever before. Weapons systems charged with incredible power. But as the energy continued to build, alarms began to blare throughout engineering. "We're overloading," Arya shouted, her hands dancing over the controls in an attempt to stabilize the power flow. Will's mind raced, assessing their options. He looked at Arya, seeing his own realization mirrored in her eyes. "We need to channel it through us," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. Arya nodded, understanding the risks. "Together," she said, reaching out to him. As they placed their hands on the pulsing ring device, Will and Arya became living conduits for the incredible energy flowing through the ship. Their bodies glowed with power, the line between human and Tarkalian blurring even further. The fate of the Endeavor and perhaps the entire sector, now rested on their ability to control this ancient power. As the ship plunged deeper into the heart of the nebula, pursued by the Zarconian fleet, Will and Arya stood at the center of the storm, their hybrid bodies the key to either salvation or destruction. Destruction. The energy coursing through their bodies threatened to tear them apart, but they held on, determined to see their plan through. Will's skin began to tingle, a strange sensation spreading across his entire body. He glanced down and saw intricate patterns of light dancing beneath his skin, pulsing in rhythm with the ship's systems. Beside him, Arya's muscles tensed and bulged, her physique becoming more defined, blending her Tarkalian heritage with human characteristics. "Will," Arya gasped, her voice strained. "We need to get closer to the ring." He nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. Together they stepped toward the ancient device, its energy calling to them like a siren's song. As they positioned themselves on either side of the ring, Will's heart raced, fear and anticipation mingling in his chest. "Ready?" he asked, locking eyes with Arya. She gave a slight nod, her bioluminescent skin flickering with nervous energy. "Together," she whispered. They reached out simultaneously, their fingers brushing the cool surface of the ring. The moment they made contact, a surge of raw power exploded through their bodies. Will cried out, his back arching as the energy coursed through every cell. Arya's eyes widened, her mouth open in a silent scream. Throughout the endeavor, systems began to stabilize. Lights flickered back to life, and the hum of the engines grew steady and strong. On the bridge, Captain Steele watched in awe as displays lit up, showing power levels beyond anything they had ever achieved. "All weapon systems online and charged," the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "Sir, our firepower has increased tenfold." Steele's eyes narrowed, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Target the Zarconian fleet. Full spread of quantum torpedoes. Fire at will." The Endeavor unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, each shot more powerful than anything they had previously wielded. Zarconian ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their shields crumpling under the onslaught. Those that survived the initial assault began to retreat, their formation breaking apart in panic. In engineering, Will and Arya stood frozen, their bodies acting as living conduits for the ancient power. The pain was excruciating, but they held on, knowing the fate of the ship rested in their hands. Will could feel his DNA twisting, reforming, blending with Arya's at a molecular level. He wanted to scream, to let go, but he couldn't. They were beyond that now. Dr. Rodriguez burst into the room, her eyes widening at the sight before her. Will and Arya stood within a cocoon of swirling energy, their bodies partially phased into each other. She rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls as she assessed their vital signs. "My God," she muttered, watching as their genetic structures rewrote themselves in real time. "They're becoming a true human Tarkalian hybrid." The ship rocked suddenly, throwing Dr. Rodriguez off balance. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands, brace for impact. We've got a new problem." On the bridge, Steele watched as a massive Zarconian Dreadnought emerged from the depths of the nebula. The behemoth ship dwarfed the Endeavor, its weapons already charging. "Evasive maneuvers," Steele ordered. "Divert all available power to shields and weapons." The sudden redistribution of power sent a shockwave through the ship's systems. In engineering, the energy cocoon surrounding Will and Arya flared violently. Their partially fused bodies began to separate, the process threatening to tear them apart at a molecular level. Dr. Rodriguez acted on instinct, racing to a nearby medical station. She grabbed a prototype stasis field generator, one they had been developing for emergency surgeries. With trembling hands, she activated the device, aiming it at Will and Arya. "Hold on," she whispered, adjusting the field's parameters. "Just hold on." The stasis field enveloped the pair, slowing the violent separation of their bodies. Will felt as if he were moving through molasses, every twitch of his muscles taking an eternity. Beside him, Arya's eyes were wide with fear and pain. As the stasis field stabilized their condition, Will's mind expanded. The ancient device pulsed with energy, pouring knowledge into his and Arya's shared consciousness. Images flashed before his eyes, a long-forgotten civilization, a galactic defense network, and a threat so terrifying it had been locked away in the deepest recesses of history. The Endeavour shuddered as the Zarconian Dreadnought opened fire. Alarms blared throughout the ship, warning of multiple hull breaches and failing systems. In engineering, sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the air grew thick with smoke. Will struggled to focus, fighting against the stasis field and the overwhelming influx of information. He knew the key to their survival lay within the ancient device, but accessing it fully might cost him and Arya their individual identities. As the ship rocked with another impact, he realized they might not have a choice. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to maintain the stasis field, her face drenched in sweat. "Captain," she called over the intercom, "I don't know how long I can keep them stable. We need to end this quickly." On the bridge, Captain Steele gripped his chair as the ship lurched violently. The Zarconian Dreadnought loomed large on the interface, its weapons charging for another devastating volley. He looked at his crew, their faces a mix of grit and fear. "Options?" he demanded. The tactical officer shook his head. "Our weapons aren't making a dent in their shields, sir. We can't take another hit like that last one." Steele's mind raced, weighing their dwindling options. The fate of his ship, his crew, and the entire human Tarkalian alliance hung in the balance. And in engineering, Will and Arya's merged consciousness grappled with ancient knowledge that could change the course of the battle, if they could access it in time. As the Zarconian Dreadnought prepared to fire again, the nebula around them began to churn and swirl with increasing violence. Energy burst from the collapsing crystal caves below, streaked through space, striking ships on both sides. The Endeavour rocked as one such burst grazed its hull, sending cascading failures through its already strained systems. In the heart of engineering, Will and Arya hovered on the brink of total fusion, their individual selves flickering like candles in a storm. The knowledge of the ancients beckoned, promising power beyond imagination. But at what cost? As the knowledge of the ancients flooded their shared consciousness, Will and Arya made their choice. They would embrace the transformation, no matter the consequences. The Endeavour shuddered violently as another barrage from the Zarconian Dreadnought struck its weakening shields. Alarms blared throughout the ship, warning of imminent system failures. In engineering, sparks flew from overloaded consoles as Dr. Rodriguez fought to maintain the stasis field surrounding Will and Arya. Suddenly, the ancient device emitted a powerful energy pulse, momentarily disrupting all systems on both the Endeavour and the Zarconian Dreadnought. The pulse rippled through the ship, causing lights to flicker and consoles to reset. In the midst of the chaos, Will and Arya's fused form began to separate. Dr. Rodriguez watched in awe as the two beings emerged, fundamentally altered yet distinct. Will's skin now bore patches of bioluminescence, pulsing with an otherworldly glow. His muscles had become more defined, a blend of human and Tarkalian physiology. Beside him, Arya's form had taken on a more human-like structure, her lithe frame now exhibiting a perfect balance between her original Tarkalian features and her newfound human traits. As the stasis field dissipated, Will and Arya opened their eyes, their gazes immediately locking. Without speaking, they communicated through their newly formed telepathic link, sharing the vast knowledge they had gained from the ancient device. "Dr. Rodriguez," Will said, his voice carrying a new resonance, "we need to reconfigure the ship's power distribution system." Arya nodded, her bioluminescent skin flickering with excitement. "We can use the hull as a conduit for the device's energy. It will create a defensive field unlike anything we've seen before." The doctor hesitated for a moment, her scientific mind racing to catch up with the implications of their transformation. I'll inform the captain," she said, reaching for the intercom. On the bridge, Captain Steele gripped his chair as the ship rocked from another impact. The tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, shields are down to 12%. We can't take much more of this." As if in answer to their dire situation, Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, Will and Arya are conscious. They have a plan to repel the Zarconian attack, but it involves significant modifications to our power systems." Steele's eyes narrowed, weighing the risks. With their current defenses failing, they had little choice. "Do it," he ordered. "Whatever they need, make it happen." The engineering team sprang into action, following Will and Aria's precise instructions. They rerouted power conduits, bypassed safety protocols, and established new energy pathways throughout the ship's hull. As the modifications neared completion, the Endeavor's hull began to resonate with energy from the ancient device. Will and Aria stood at the center of engineering, their hands hovering over a newly installed control interface. "Ready?" Will asked, glancing at his partner. Aria nodded, her eyes gleaming with grit. "Together?" she replied, echoing their earlier declaration. They placed their hands on the interface, channeling the device's energy through their hybrid bodies and into the ship's systems. The Endeavor's hull crackled with power, a shimmering energy field extending beyond its normal shields. On the bridge, the tactical officer's eyes widened in disbelief. "Captain, our shields, they're at 300% capacity and rising." Steele allowed himself a small smile. "Helm, bring us about. Tactical, prepare to return fire." The Zarconian Dreadnought launched another volley, its weapons fire splashing harmlessly against the Endeavor's new energy field. Steele leaned forward in his chair, his voice steady as he gave the order. "Fire at will." Guided by Will and Aria's shared consciousness, the tactical officer targeted specific weak points on the Dreadnought's hull. The Endeavor unleashed a series of precisely aimed energy beams, each one amplified by the ancient device's power. The beams sliced through the enemy's shields, striking vital systems with surgical precision. As the battle raged on, the nebula around them began to churn violently. Dense pockets of charged particles formed, creating a treacherous navigational hazard. Steele recognized the opportunity presented by this new development. "Helm, plot a course through those energy pockets," he ordered. "Let's see if our Zarconian friends can keep up." The Endeavor weaved through the dangerous obstacles with remarkable agility, its enhanced systems allowing for unprecedented maneuverability. The massive Zarconian Dreadnought, in contrast, struggled to maintain its position, its bulky form ill-suited for such precise navigation. Just as the tide of battle seemed to be turning in their favor, long-range sensors detected new arrivals. The tactical officer's voice was filled with relief as he announced, "Sir, Tarkalian reinforcements have arrived." The Tarkalian fleet emerged from warp, immediately engaging the Zarconian forces. Caught in a deadly crossfire between the Endeavor and the newly arrived allies, the enemy ships began to falter. However, the Zarconian Dreadnought was far from defeated. Its damaged hull sparked and vented atmosphere, but at its core, a massive energy buildup was detected. The tactical officer's voice was grim as he reported, "Captain, the Dreadnought is powering up some kind of superweapon. Energy readings are off the charts." In engineering, Will and Aria sensed the imminent danger through their connection to the ship's systems. They exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. Will's voice was solemn as he activated the intercom. "Captain, we have a way to stop them, but it's risky. We need to channel the full power of the ancient device through our bodies to launch a final, decisive strike." Steele closed his eyes for a moment, understanding the potential cost of such an action. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of command. "Do it. And thank you, both of you." Will and Aria positioned themselves on either side of the ancient device, their hybrid bodies humming with anticipation. As they began to channel its energy, their skin glowed with an intense, otherworldly light. The ship's systems strained under the immense power flow, pushing the Endeavor to its structural limits. On the bridge, Steele watched as the Zarconian Dreadnought's weapon reached critical mass. "Brace for impact!" he shouted, knowing that the next few moments would determine the fate of his ship and crew. In engineering, Will and Aria's bodies arched in pain as they channeled more power than they had ever thought possible. Their shared consciousness focused on a single point, guiding the energy into a cohesive beam. With a final surge of effort, they released the accumulated power. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the Endeavor, cutting through the nebula's charged particles like a scythe. It struck the Zarconian Dreadnought just as the enemy vessel prepared to fire its superweapon. The impact was catastrophic, breaching the Dreadnought's hull in multiple locations and destabilizing its power core. As the Zarconian ship began to break apart, a massive explosion tore through its structure. The resulting shockwave raced towards the Endeavor, threatening to overwhelm its already taxed systems. In engineering, Will and Arya collapsed to the floor, their bodies smoking from the incredible energies they had channeled. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to their side, her medical tricorder beeping urgently as she assessed their condition. The Endeavor, its energy reserves depleted from the powerful attack, struggled to maintain stability as the shockwave approached. On the bridge, Captain Steele gripped his chair, his nucleus tightening. "All hands, brace for impact!" As the wall of energy rushed towards them, the crew of the Endeavor held their breath, uncertain if their weakened shields would hold against this final onslaught. The fate of the ship, its crew, and the newly forged human Tarkalian alliance hung in the balance, with the potential to reshape the future of the entire sector. Galaxy. The shockwave slammed into the Endeavor with devastating force, threatening to tear the ship apart. Captain Steele's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "All power to shields. Reroute everything we've got left." The ship's weakened systems strained against the onslaught, shield generators whining in protest as they struggled to maintain integrity. Steele knew it wouldn't be enough. His grip tightened on the arms of his chair as he prepared for the worst. In engineering, Will and Arya stirred from their collapsed state, their hybrid bodies still smoking from the immense energies they had channeled. Through their newly strengthened telepathic link, they sensed the ship's peril. Without a word, they reached out with trembling hands, touching the ancient device once more. Dr. Rodriguez moved to stop them, but froze as she witnessed the transformation taking place before her eyes. Energy crackled across Will and Arya's skin, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with renewed intensity. They poured the last remnants of the device's power into the ship's hull, weaving it into a protective cocoon around the Endeavor. The shockwave hit full force, rattling the ship violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and crew members were thrown from their stations. But the energy cocoon held, absorbing much of the impact. As the turbulence subsided, an eerie silence fell over the ship. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridors in a dim red glow. Steele tapped his now silent command console, grimacing at the lack of response. "Damage report," he called out, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet. The tactical officer struggled to his feet, wiping blood from a gash on his forehead. "Main power's offline, sir. Life support on emergency backups. We're adrift." Steele nodded grimly, surveying the darkened bridge. They had survived, but at a steep cost. His thoughts turned to engineering and the two beings who had made their survival possible. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez worked feverishly to stabilize Will and Arya. Their hybrid physiology had undergone further changes, presenting the doctor with a unique challenge. Will's bioluminescent patches had spread, covering most of his body in a softly pulsing glow. Arya's form seemed to shimmer, small force fields flickering into existence around her hands as she stirred restlessly. As Dr. Rodriguez adjusted her instruments to accommodate their altered biology, a comm channel crackled to life. Admiral Zarek's voice filled the room, tinged with both relief and concern. "Endeavor, this is Admiral Zarek of the Tarkalian fleet. We're approaching your position. What is your status?" Captain Steele responded, his voice steady despite the dire situation. "Admiral, we've sustained heavy damage. Main power is down and we're operating on emergency systems. We could use some assistance." "Understood, Captain. We're dispatching engineering teams to your location now." As Tarkalian shuttles docked with the crippled Endeavor, Will and Arya began to regain consciousness. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Their ordeal had changed them in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. Will flexed his hand, watching as bioluminescent patterns danced across his skin. Arya concentrated, generating a small force field between her palms. They shared a look of wonder and trepidation at their newfound abilities. Dr. Rodriguez approached, her expression a mix of scientific curiosity and medical concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked, running a scanner over their altered forms. "Different," Will replied, his voice carrying a new resonance. "But stronger, somehow. Arya nodded in agreement. It's as if we can sense the energy around us now. The ship, the nebula, it's all connected. As the Tarkalian engineering teams worked to restore the Endeavor's systems, an unexpected discovery was made. A young ensign, assisting with repairs near the hull, noticed strange readings on her equipment. "Sir," she called to her superior, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures in the nebula. They seem to be concentrating." Word of the discovery quickly reached Captain Steele and Admiral Zarek. The two leaders convened in the Endeavor's conference room, joined by Will, Arya, and Dr. Rodriguez. The energy discharge from the ancient device appears to have altered the nebula's composition, Dr. Rodriguez explained, displaying holographic models of the phenomenon. It's creating pockets of highly concentrated, exotic matter. Will leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with newfound understanding. The matter, it's similar to the crystals we found in the caves. This nebula, it's not just a natural formation. Arya continued his thought, their shared consciousness allowing them to finish each other's sentences. It's a massive energy reserve, created by the ancient civilization that built the device. Captain Steele and Admiral Zarek exchanged glances, the implications of this revelation sinking in. The nebula was more than just a stellar phenomenon. It was a key to unlocking the secrets of a long-lost civilization. As the group discussed the potential ramifications of their discovery, the ship's long-range sensors suddenly came back online. The tactical officer's voice came through the intercom, urgency evident in his tone. "Captain, we're detecting unknown vessels at the edge of the nebula. They appear to be probing its outer regions." The room fell silent as the weight of this new development settled over them. The Endeavor and its crew had stumbled upon something of immense value, and they weren't the only ones who had noticed. Captain Steele's voice was resolute as he addressed the group. "We need to investigate these vessels. Admiral, I propose a joint reconnaissance mission." Admiral Zarek nodded in agreement. "Agreed. But who will lead this mission? It will require someone with intimate knowledge of both the nebula and the ancient technology." All eyes turned to Will and Arya. The hybrid couple shared a moment of silent communication before Will spoke. "We'll go. Our new abilities might give us an edge out there." As preparations for the reconnaissance mission began, Will and Arya found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the ship. The events of the past few days had brought them closer than ever, blurring the lines between their individual identities and species. Arya reached out, her fingers intertwining with Will's. The touch sent a spark of energy between them, a physical manifestation of their deepening bond. They stood in silence, acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead and the evolving nature of their relationship. The next day, Will and Arya boarded a specially modified shuttle, equipped with the best of both human and Tarkalian technology. As the shuttle's engines hummed to life, Captain Steele's voice came through the comm system. "Good luck out there," he said, his tone a mix of hope and concern. "Remember, we're counting on you to uncover the truth about these unknown vessels. But be careful. We don't know what you might encounter out there." Will and Arya exchanged a final glance before the shuttle's hatch closed. Their mission would take them into the unknown regions of the nebula, where the fate of the human-Tarkalian alliance and the secrets of an ancient civilization awaited discovery. As they departed from the Endeavor, the vastness of space stretched out before them, filled with both promise and peril. As they departed from the Endeavor, the vastness of space stretched out before them, filled with both promise and uncertainty. Will and Arya guided their shuttle deeper into the uncharted regions of the nebula, their newly enhanced senses attuned to the swirling energies around them. "Look at those energy patterns," Arya said, gesturing to the vibrant streams of exotic matter flowing past their viewport. "They're unlike anything we've ever seen." Will nodded, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in response to the nebula's fluctuations. "It's as if the entire region is alive, communicating in a language we're only beginning to understand." As they ventured further, their sensors began to pick up an anomalous reading. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a dense pocket of exotic matter, but as they drew closer, the true nature of the anomaly revealed itself. "Will, are you seeing this?" Arya's voice was filled with awe as she magnified the image on their main screen. Before them, Hidden within the swirling clouds of energy was a massive structure. Its sleek, otherworldly design spoke of an advanced civilization far beyond their own. It's a space station, Will breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. And if I'm not mistaken, it bears similarities to the architecture we saw on the Planetoid. They shared a look of understanding. This station was likely built by the same ancient civilization that created the crystals in the ring device. Without hesitation, they maneuvered their shuttle towards the structure, drawn by an inexplicable sense of purpose. As they approached, they noticed the intense energy fields surrounding the station. Any normal vessel would have been torn apart, but their hybrid physiology allowed them to withstand the onslaught. Their shuttle, enhanced with the best of human and Tarkalian technology, held steady as they searched for a place to dock. There, Arya pointed to a small opening that seemed to pulse with invitation. It's as if the station is recognizing us. Will guided the shuttle into the docking bay, feeling a strange resonance as they passed through the energy barrier. The moment their vessel touched down, dormant systems throughout the station flickered to life, responding to their presence. They stepped out of the shuttle, their bodies tingling with the raw energy permeating the air. The station's interior was a marvel of design, with sleek corridors leading to vast chambers filled with technology beyond their wildest imaginations. As they walked, holographic displays sprang to life around them, depicting star charts, complex equations, and what appeared to be genetic sequences. Will and Arya moved in perfect sync, their shared consciousness allowing them to process the flood of information with remarkable speed. Suddenly, a shimmering figure materialized before them, the station's AI awakening after eons of dormancy. Its voice echoed in their minds, a mixture of surprise and what could only be described as satisfaction. At last, the AI intoned, its form shifting like liquid light. The first successful human Tarkalian hybrids. You are the fulfillment of a plan set in motion millennia ago. Will and Arya exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. What plan? Will asked, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. The AI's form expanded, encompassing them in a sphere of light. Images flashed around them, stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling, and a looming threat that sent chills down their spines. This station, the AI explained, is a genetic repository and research center. It was created to foster the evolution and combination of compatible species. The goal, to prepare for a galactic threat that our creators foresaw. As if on cue, the station's long-range sensors activated, displaying a massive fleet of unknown origin approaching the galaxy. The AI confirmed their worst fears. This is the threat we prepared for. A race of energy beings intent on harvesting the life force of organic species. The urgency of the situation hit Will and Arya like a physical force. They understood now why they had been drawn here, why their hybrid nature was so crucial. Without a word, they began to interface with the station's systems, their telepathic link allowing them to absorb the knowledge stored in its vast databases at an astonishing rate. They learned of a plan to activate a network of similar stations throughout the galaxy, creating a defensive grid powered by the combined energy of multiple nebulae. It was an audacious scheme, one that could save not just their own species, but all life in the galaxy. However, the activation required something extraordinary, 2 fully bonded hybrid individuals to interface with the station's core. Will and Arya realized with growing clarity that this final melding would permanently alter their physiology and merge their consciousness. They stood at the threshold of the core chamber, the enormity of their decision weighing heavily upon them. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, yet in this moment, their thoughts were only for each other. Will took Arya's hand, feeling the energy pulse between them. I never imagined our journey would lead us here, he said softly, but I can't think of anyone I'd rather face this with than you. Arya's eyes shimmered with emotion. We've come so far together, Will. Whatever happens next, know that my love for you transcends all boundaries, physical, mental, and spiritual. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, a final moment of individuality before they would become something more. As they broke apart, they stepped into the core chamber, their bodies beginning to glow as they interfaced with the ancient technology. Energy coursed through them, more powerful than anything they had experienced before. Their consciousness expanded, connecting with the galactic network of stations. In that instant, Will and Arya ceased to exist as separate entities. Their physical forms merged into a single radiant being of pure energy, a perfect synthesis of human and Tarkalian. This new entity, possessing the combined knowledge and abilities of both species, initiated the activation sequence for the defensive grid. Across the galaxy, massive energy beams erupted from nebulae, converging to form an impenetrable barrier. As the invading fleet of energy beings arrived at the edge of the galaxy, they found their path blocked by a force they could not comprehend. Unable to penetrate the defense, they were forced to retreat, their harvest thwarted. The merged Will Arya, being now a guardian of unimaginable power, turned its attention to the Endeavor and the Tarkalian fleet. It was time to share the knowledge of the ancient civilization and usher in a new era of cooperation and advancement for both species. The entity reached out with its mind, transmitting data at speeds that would have been impossible for any conventional communication system. Captain Steele and Admiral Zarek found their ship's computers flooded with information that would change the course of their civilizations forever. As the cosmic drama unfolded, the merged being settled into its new role as protector and teacher. It knew that this was only the beginning, a new chapter in the grand story of galactic evolution. The challenges ahead were many, but for the first time in eons, the galaxy was united and prepared to face them together.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.